Now, let's bring in Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, first Hamas broke the ceasefire and the fighting resumed. Now Hamas wants a ceasefire. Will Israel accept that, and what happens next?
Well, Hamas has broken 5 ceasefires that we accepted and we actually implemented. They rejected all of them, violated all of them, including 2 humanitarian ceasefires in the last 24 hours. Now they come with their own ceasefire proposal, and believe it or not, they violated even their own ceasefire proposal. They're shooting at us as we speak. So Israel is not obliged and is not going to let a terrorist organization determine when it's convenient for them to fire at our cities, at our people, and when it's not, when they can restock. We'll take the necessary action to protect our people, including, by the way, continue to dismantle the tunnels. That's my policy.
So basically, the offensive, the Israeli offensive in Gaza is going to continue.
We'll do whatever is necessary to achieve our goal, which is to get a sustainable quiet. And as far as Hamas and its so-called ceasefires, they're violating their own ceasefires. It's come to the level of absurdity right now.
Your defense minister has talked this weekend about a significant expansion of the Israeli operation. What does that mean, and how long is it going to take? When will you know that you have achieved your goals?
Well, we'll continue to act until we bring quiet and security to our people. And I think that right now, as long as Hamas continues rocketing our people, attacking us, digging these tunnels under which, you know what they do? They dig. They got money from the international community to build kindergartens. They took that money and built tunnels, dug tunnels to blow up our kindergartens. So obviously we have to dismantle that, and we are. And we'll continue to do it until we achieve our goal of having this security that we can bring to our people. I hope it's as soon as possible, obviously.
Mr. Prime Minister, Gaza officials say now that more than 1,000 Palestinians, the vast majority of them civilians, have been killed. International opposition to your operation, as you well know, is growing. Is that not a concern to you? And what about the protests, even riots on the West Bank? Are you concerned at all about a third intifada or uprising there?
Well, first, I know that's what Hamas is trying to do. They're trying to instigate violence in the West Bank as well, and we expect President Abbas to do what he can to, and what he's responsible for, to keep the quiet on that front, because Hamas just wants that to blow up as well. As far as the civilian casualties, I have to tell you, each one of them is a tragedy. We don't want a single civilian tragedy. We're not targeting a single civilian. And every time you see these pictures, they're heartbreaking. But why is it happening? It's happening because Hamas is firing 25,000 rockets on our cities. They're attacking us with terror tunnels dug into our territory. They're attacking us by land, sea, and air. And obviously, we have to respond. When we respond, Hamas, we are trying to minimize the civilians. We tell civilian casualties. We tell the civilians, leave. Hamas tells them to stay. Why does it tell them to stay? Because it wants to pile up these civilian casualties. So any of these regrettable, tragic civilian casualties should be placed at the responsibility of Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization, ruthless terrorist organization, that not only wants to kill our people, it wants to sacrifice its own people. It uses them as human shields, and therefore it should be blamed and not Israel. That's the truth, and that's a simple clarity, moral clarity that should not be lost in this conflict.
There are demands on both sides, though, sir, and I want to discuss a couple of those with you. Hamas is demanding an end to Israel's economic blockade of Gaza, and in fact, you do block most imports going into the country and all exports leaving Gaza to go either to the West Bank or to Israel. And unemployment in Gaza is now over 50%. Don't they have a legitimate demand there, sir?
First of all, we're letting in economic goods come into Gaza. We're letting humanitarian goods as we speak now. With a ceasefire, without a ceasefire, we continue to have trucks and trucks coming in into Gaza. The reason there's been constriction of access to Gaza is precisely because they've used the incoming material, including cement or concrete, to build these tunnels, to build terror rockets, to build missiles and so on, from which they fire. Naturally, we have to make sure that such weaponry, such materials do not enter into Gaza. I think there is a path to get out of this once we have, I think the first thing is to accept the Egyptian proposal. That's the only game in town. What it will do is will enable us to actually get a sustainable ceasefire. That sustainable ceasefire consists of two things. One, demilitarization of Gaza. We want to make sure that there are no more additional rockets, tunnels, missiles, and so on. Otherwise, we'll be back here every few months. Second, economic and social relief for the people of Gaza. Now, if you want economic and social relief for the people of Gaza, you have to make sure that demilitarization works. Why? Because if the international community will rush again to give cement, concrete, to Gaza, to build, for Hamas, to build the buildings, they'll use it for tunnels. So you have to have a mechanism to prevent the abuse of this cement or concrete. If you want to give them money, you want money to go to the people of Gaza. But if the money comes in and Hamas uses it to manufacture rockets and missiles, you're going to be exactly where we are now. So you need demilitarization and economic and social relief for the people of Gaza. I think that the economic and social relief is tied to demilitarization because otherwise it will simply not work.
But don't you worry, sir, and I'm not without taking sides on who's responsible for the civilian deaths, but that every time that as an Israeli tank shell or a missile hits a family and people are killed, that demilitarization becomes even harder, that there are going to be thousands of Palestinians, many of whom will have lost some of their civilians. And again, not saying who's responsible for that, but that's going to make the possibility of any kind of a peaceful situation in your part of the world even more difficult.
Look, we face a very, very difficult situation with a ruthless enemy. It's the same thing that you see with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, with Boko Haram, with Hezbollah. These people just don't care. So we cannot pretend that we can allow them to continue to attack us, continue to fire rockets at us, continue to dig tunnels against us and say, okay, because we don't want to take action against them, they can continue this. What choice do we have? Obviously, we try to minimize as best as we can civilian casualties. They're all incidental casualties. None of them are a direct target. But we have no choice but to defend ourselves. And you're right, this creates a terrible tragedy when you have an enemy that deliberately wants to pile up its own people, the deaths of its own people as a human shield and as a battering ram in international diplomacy. The only thing that I can say is appeal to the people watching us to say, don't let them get away with it. Put the blame where blame belongs, on Hamas.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, thank you so much for talking with us today, sir. Always good to speak with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.